Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the HOMFPV Micron RS. This is a new updated Micron from HOMFPV. The basic genesis is the board has more lights on it, so you can use that for fun. And they've also upgraded the board to where it can take up to 6S, and the amp rating on the ESC is now 35 amps. I didn't have the original Micron, so I don't know if there was troubles with it or anything of that nature. Instead of going through the typical quick specs, I think most of you are probably either not interested in this quad or you're already familiar with it from its previous iteration. So that's the updated or changes to this. So let's get it and weigh it as to how I flew it. The Micron RS all by itself weighs about 100 grams. With all the gear that we need for the HD recording and the 450 milliamp 4S battery, which is the recommended battery, it weighs just over 184 grams. This is just a simple lead that I made to plug into the naked GoPro. Just goes between the battery and the quad lead. Pretty dead simple. I don't have to fuss with any other leads. Motor post to motor post looks like 97 millimeters. Here's our flight. There is some wind, but it's relatively calm. You know, it takes me a while to get really calm days sometimes around here. And this is maybe one of my best cinewhoop or cinematic sort of flights. I think the lighting's pretty good. We've got color now that, you know, we're deeper into spring, nearing summer. We've got greenery. We've got different colors to look at. And I do an okay job in the flight, and the Hero 6 is, you know, pretty good for this sort of job. Some people don't really like it. They prefer the Hero 8. I don't have a naked Hero 8 to work with, so I work with what I have. And this is, as I said, I think one of my better shots as far as, you know, how it looks. It isn't necessarily one of my better flights or most interesting flights, but in how everything looks, this one is quite a bit better. Of course, the one thing that I think most people say or think about this, and it actually I'm going to kind of loosely quote a comment from a few weeks back, and I wish I had captured that, but 90% of these quads fly the same way. 90% of these quads sound the same way. Yeah, it's kind of true. It kind of depends on your form factor, whether you like how the design or the look. You know, this has that foam padding around the outside, and I think we could do ourselves a favor by removing that. But of course, if you're flying inside, that foam padding could be handy. We've got quad-bladed props on those motors, and I'll put a link down in the video description to where you can go check the full specs and everything. I apologize for jumping format if this is something that hasn't been covered very well by others. I assumed that it had been covered pretty well by others just because, you know, this is the second iteration of it and I hadn't seen it before, so I figure others probably have, and that likely means many of you that are enthusiasts have seen it as well. A couple things to note, and we'll point these out back at the desk, but while you're still here, is it does not appear as though the top plate is carbon. It just doesn't have a carbon look to it. I could be wrong. That looks like some sort of pressed material that has LED lights in it, so maybe some sort of PCB material, which it does kind of look like that, and very well could be. But on the bottom, they do have a carbon bit, and then they have some foam padding for landing on. Also, the USB port is kind of buried, but they do include an extension to get it out. Even if you were to break the extension for the USB port off, that's not a big deal because you can still reach the USB port with your regular USB cable. It does not come with a receiver, so I had to add my own. So I put an FrSky XM Plus on there and just stuck the antennas out the back. No big deals there. I think I may have mentioned it already. I apologize if I did, but the sound, I think, and actually the flight time and flight performance could all be improved by removing the foam padding. I didn't do it in my particular case. It's stuck on there pretty good. I kind of thought if I tear this off, then it's going to come off in bits, or it's never going to go back on. And it's very likely that one day this will find a new home, and depending upon that home, they may want this intact. So that was my primary reason for not taking it off, and this is how it comes out of the box. I didn't mention some of the components or anything like that, but I do like the looks of they're kind of got this rainbow style of motor where it kind of changes color depending upon how the light hits it. That's pretty cool. Kind of a sharp little addition. They do use hex screws all the way around, and the camera can be adjusted, and I'll show you the analog. This is GoPro footage. I said that once, but I should say it again here. It's been 3 minutes. This is GoPro footage. This is not what you see in the goggles. And the total flight time is going to come in at 4 minutes and 37 seconds on that 4S 450 milliamp GNV battery. But back to the camera. It can be adjusted, but I found that to get adjusted to where I didn't see the bars that protect the camera kind of taking up a lot of the FPV view, I had to take the front assembly apart and then move the camera forward. There's 2 notches in the side plates, and I had to move the camera to the forward notch. The camera still has protection. It's still behind the metal bars that make up the front area, but you know, that was a little bit of a process. All right, we're going to come in for our landing here, and we'll take a look at our analog footage up next. Okay, here's our analog footage. This is very important to know that this is what you see in the goggles. At least this is a recording of the DVR on the goggles. It isn't necessarily 100% representation, but this is the kind of the best we can do in a YouTube video sort of format. And you can see it's got the shutters, and so what the Hero 6 did is pretty remarkable with all that stabilization. Although I will say the Hero 6 seems to do better with vertical stabilization, because when you yaw around, it doesn't tend to do as well. It tends to have kind of a sharp snap every once in a while, or the move doesn't get rounded off. But, you know, for review purposes, it shows you what it looks like in, you know, the GoPro 6 footage, and then we get to look at this analog here. The video reception is pretty good going around the front of the house. This is one of the areas that it can kind of get kind of rough and break up. It's represented here worse than it actually is in the goggles. I don't know why that is, but it has been that way since, well, my time in the hobby, that goggle representation of, or DVR representation of breakup is always worse than it actually is in the goggles. I don't know if it's just that we can see it better in DVR, or if it's actually the DVR is picking up extra breakup. I don't know. It's the weirdest dang thing. But of course, you know, I've got wind, and it's not terrible. It's 5 to 7 miles an hour. It's about as good as it really gets in my area. And so, you know, it doesn't like wind. None of these things ever do. So it doesn't seem like I should be one trying to get any filming jobs, huh? Not that I'm trying or anything like that, but I do want to make sure that I show you guys everything that I have as far as the experience goes. And these things, 90% of them do fly differently. I'll say the ones that don't fly like most of the others is the GEPRC Cinlog 25 and the HOMFPV wingsuit. I haven't flown the wingsuit, but I have talked to a number of people and chatted with them, and I have been told you need to get one of these and try it out. I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. It seems like at this point it's an expense where I already have the Cinlog 25, and that seems like it's very, very similar. So if this size or form factor isn't necessarily what you have to have, you might want to take a look at the HOMFPV wingsuit. Also, I'm not sure if you can buy these things anywhere outside of HOMFPV.com. I'm not seeing them listed on... I did see the wingsuit listed on a few other sites, but maybe I'm just missing it. But I don't see them widely available. So down below, I'll have a link to the HOMFPV.com web shop, and then you can look around at other web shops you might be aware of for this or other HOMFPV products that you might be interested in. I think we've seen plenty of flight footage. You see the battery starting to get low there. Let's go back to the desk, and we'll talk about a few things that I've already mentioned in the during the flight portion. We'll kind of go over those things again, and we'll wrap up. So one of the things that I mentioned was that this is a PCB. If you can see there, how it's got LEDs right here, right there, and it's got them on the other side. Let me plug in a battery, and I'll see if I can show those under the lights. Probably get motors beeping. Oh, yeah. No radio on. It doesn't like me. Okay, but those LEDs are programmable, and they're different colors depending upon, like, you know, we got yellow right there, and I suspect that's because no receiver connected. It flashed red on boot up. I've also seen green, so that's kind of cool and interesting. This is a rubber pad here. I do wish all companies used rubber every once in a while, and I've got a quad coming up. A quad I really like, but I think all companies need to use rubber where the battery's supposed to go. it's silly to use foam because foam doesn't do that much other than to maybe protect the battery in a crash. But we were going to take a look at that. That's, you know, some sort of PCB, so they have traces in there. So if those lights stop functioning, then you know you've got to replace. Well, I guess if you got the skill set, you can replace the individual light that's broken. But if you have a hard upside down crash, you may break a trace that's in this board. So you may have one or more lights that don't work from the trace being broken if you do have a big upside down crash. While we're up top here, you see the USB-C port is right up here, and that just comes with the kit. You can see how I put it on top of the antenna mount. That's how it seemed to be for me that this would best work. And then it goes down in the back here and it connects to the USB port. I left the USB port on here because with the battery in the quad, it kind of protects the USB port from getting any damage. So you'd have to kind of come in backwards at an angle. And even if you did damage the USB port, it's not as though you're damaging the actual USB port. You're damaging the extension. So you could probably get another one of these extensions from HOMFPV or some other shop. I mentioned the color of the motors. Hopefully that comes up in camera, how they kind of change in the light. I think that's super cool. And also while we're here at the bottom, you can see my XM Plus. You can see where I've actually lost a couple of screws. I've only got one remaining screw. No, two. No, I think it's two. Maybe it came that way, but maybe I haven't lost them. It's been a while. I had to keep this a long time because I kept taking it out. And, you know, trying to fly it in various weather conditions. I was actually trying to fly it with my Insta360 Go 2. Very disappointed in the stabilization of the Go 2. The old Hero 6 did way better. I've actually been sending videos and working with Insta360 support on that. So this is fairly delayed. I think I've had this 3 weeks, maybe a month now. And that might be why I can't recall if those screws were, or the nuts were there or not. But I'll be sure to get some back on there before I am done here for this evening. I did mention the camera, the foam here. Sorry, this is the foam. I like the fact that you have a landing pad. That's kind of nice. So you've got a little bit of extension off this location of the prop. You know, I'm always concerned about the props being obstructed when we're turning them. That can cause big problems. Of course, we have a big amp rating, which should be fine. You should notice that if your prop is stuck, that you wouldn't burn the ESC, you would have some other sort of alert, like maybe a runaway alert. So here's kind of an angle look at that cage for the camera. And, you know, it's kind of a pain in the patoot. And I don't know if you can see it maybe down through there. I don't think I got enough light. Let me see if I can get a flashlight on that little section. Now maybe, can you see it? So the screw is at the front part, and then there's another part in the rear. It came in the rear back there. So even though in the analog footage that I showed you, you could see the bars of the cage a little bit, the way it came out of the box, you could really see the entirety of the bar and a little bit of the foam. So I moved that forward. And to do that, I found the easiest way was just to take these two screws and these two screws out of there and then move the whole assembly out. Trying to do it, you know, through here or something like that might work if you don't have the foam on there. In my case, it didn't work. But the little bracket that I was trying to show you down through there is kind of two circles, two partial circles. So you can't just slide the camera forward and back. You have to actually take the screw out, slide the camera forward, then put the screw back in. Because the screw with those little two half circles, it can't move between there. So that's a little bit of pain in the backside in order to be able to relocate your camera. But, you know, once it's done, it's done. Well, I guess unless you need to change camera angle. It did come with this little TPU print here to mount some sort of action camera, HD camera, what have you. I don't see where maybe I need to look a little bit harder on their website, but I would have personally thought if you're going to include this, you know, give us some sort of naked GoPro mount with it as well. It's a minor thing. A good many people in this hobby have a printer. You can have prints ordered through various companies. I know Race Day Quads does printing, Jack's 3D Printing does printing. There's a whole bunch of services out there you can use for 3D printing if you don't have your own printer. Ultimately, with this mount on the front, I'm not terribly concerned about the battery lead and the fact that it's not secured down. Because if the battery does come forward, it's going to hit this mount in some capacity. You know, it's not that high up off of this board, so it's going to hit that mount. So I would think that it wouldn't tug on this unless I guess you had a backwards crash, and if you've mounted the USB port on the back, then you should shear that off before you ruin your ESC by pulling on the battery lead. But yeah, it's very similar to many other quads that we see in this category. Hopefully you've got enough information to know whether you're interested in this quad or not. And if you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comment section below. I do appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.